So I'm going to ask our producers to cue the first slide. We looked at 113 countries because this was the number of countries for which we could find good data. We looked at them in all different parts of the world, so we made sure we included some countries from every continent. And overall, this is a snapshot of what we found. If you look at the map, the lighter colored countries did very well. The darker ones really had much fewer opportunities for women. If you want to drill down a little bit more specifically, the top 10 finishers, these are the countries that came right at the top. This is a 0 to 100 score. So those are the ones that have really made great progress in advancing economic opportunities for women. And those at the bottom, we're going to show you those as well. These are the countries that came in the very bottom 10 places on our list. If you want to really highlight the 3 or 4 big winners, these are the countries that come up next who came first, second, and third. Possibly countries that you would expect, big developed Western European countries, and the 3 at the very bottom, Chad, Yemen, and Sudan. What about the U.S., you might ask? A guess? There's the answer, about 15th, not bad. But the U.S. is held back by the fact that there are no mandatory maternity leave rights for women in the U.S., and the U.S. doesn't like signing international treaties, including ones that protect women's rights as well. So these 4 are foundational issues that really create the right kind of environment. Now, what did we find out about labor laws? A lot of countries have great labor laws. In fact, the policies are not bad at all. The difficulty is the enforcement of those labor laws is very weak. And you can see that in all parts of the world, no matter what continent you're looking at, enforcement really lags behind what's happening in terms of policy. Access to finance, pretty good ability for women to get the loans that they need, especially in New Zealand and Australia. We call those Oceania here, and not too bad also in the Americas. For education, the best educated women are in Europe, based on the numbers that we were able to crunch. Secondly, in the Americas. Education obviously critically important to moving up in the workforce. And then social status was interesting. Eastern European countries really came near the top, and this may be the only good legacy of communism. During those years, women were expected to work. They were treated with more respect in the workforce, and even now, in some ways, women are more accepted in the workforce in some of those Eastern European countries than even in the West. Maternity leave is really important because women have to be able, if they're going to go out of the workforce, to come back in again. So we asked ourselves and looked at the data to determine which countries offer the best protections for maternity leave. And you can see that Europe really comes to the top of the list, with the Americas coming next, a good combination in Europe of financial coverage and extent of coverage. Within Europe, you wouldn't be surprised to know Western European countries did well, but on our scoring system here, Eastern European countries actually offered better maternity leave protections even than the Scandinavian countries in some cases. Overall, of those 113 countries we looked at, 111, all but 2, offered some kind of mandatory paid maternity leave for women, and 22 of the countries got perfect scores of 100 the way we were ranking our index. Which 2 offered no benefits? There you go. And Australia will begin offering benefits next month. Now, there were 2 other issues we wanted to drill down on. We talked a little bit about maternity leave because of the importance in keeping women in the workforce. The other very basic one, equal pay for equal work. To what extent is that really happening around the world? The answer is the regulations look good, the enforcement looks awful. And as we run around the world here, you can see that no matter where we're looking, countries pass good laws and they do very little to enforce them. In fact, on average, globally, women earn 75% of what men do. And there's no really good explanation for that. Now, beyond that, we also tried to look at the overall effects, and you should see it very well here. You can see the gap between what countries promise to do and what they actually do in effect, and there are some big gaps there. About half the countries, interestingly, scored 0 on our index in terms of whether they're actually enforcing their laws. A few European countries missed the boat, a lot in the Americas. If you look at Africa and Asia, 60 to 70% of the countries scored dead 0 in our index for enforcing equal pay laws. So what we concluded there is, if you're in government, in most countries, it's easy to pass the laws, but most countries are doing next to nothing to actually enforce them. So there is a lot of progress that needs to be made there. We're going to look at one final issue before we wrap up. And we're looking here really at 3 dimensions. We asked ourselves, do countries have laws that protect women against sexual harassment, domestic violence, and sexual assault? Are there laws on the books? 61 countries have laws protecting against all three. So these are the countries that have done really well, and you can see where they're scattered around the world. At the same time, there are 5 countries that have 0 laws, no laws whatsoever that protect women against any kind of violence at all. Why does this matter? We looked at a study in Chile. Women who are exposed to violence earn half as much as women who are not. If you look at it in terms of days lost, we looked at a study from Uganda. In Uganda, women exposed to violence lost an extra 11 days to women that were not. This matters not only for the women themselves who are being abused here, but it matters for economies. We looked at economies from the tiniest ones in the South Pacific right up to mid-sized economies and to the larger ones, and countries are losing millions and in some cases billions of dollars because of violence against women. So it's not only a personal issue, it's also an economic issue.